Hi everyone, Caroline here. Today I'm going to be talking to you about factors in history. Now, this is something that people can get quite nervous about, but there's no need. Once you get past the name, it's actually really simple and it's a really nice way of boosting your grade really quickly. So, what are factors? And it's the name that puts people off because factor isn't really a word we use very much, so people aren't really familiar with it. But actually, what it is really simple. So, they are just reasons why things change. So, factors are just reasons. So, reasons why things change. So, for example, in medicine, there are factors that help improve medicine. So, there are reasons why things get a lot better in medicine and why improvements are made. And there are factors that hold back medicine. So occasionally we get reasons why progress isn't being made. People are coming up with ideas that are right, but they're not being accepted and are being held back. So there are a number of factors that affect medicine in particular that we do need to know about, and they crop up all the way throughout the course. So the first one's religion. Religion's a really big one at the start of the course. When we look at the Middle Ages, religion has a massive part to play in affecting the development of medicine. So in some ways it really helps. The church is running the hospitals, they're copying out medical textbooks. In other ways, though, they're holding it back. So they're not allowing new ideas. For example, they're not allowing dissection, which holds back knowledge of anatomy. And as time goes on, we will see that religion actually becomes less important. And in a way, as religion goes out, it gets replaced by the government. So as religion becomes less important, the government becomes more important. So how much the government interferes, if you like, in medicine, how much it promotes the health of people, how much it holds back any progress. Another huge one is going to be science. And we really see that after the Middle Ages. So science really starts to get going. It becomes very fashionable to be knowledgeable, to know lots. And science is a huge part of that. We also see a lot of people starting to do experiments, starting to actively try and gain more knowledge. And hand in hand with that is often technology. So technology, by which we mean inventions, things that make the life easier for scientists. So whether that's the microscope or the printing press, things that will help scientists. And then a really huge one for a lot of us is going to be individuals. So those individual people, there are quite a few of them that we have to learn and we'll go through. I will do a whole series of videos on each one. So don't worry if you are struggling to keep them straight. It's totally normal to feel a little bit overwhelmed by how many that are, but I'm going to help you sort that. War actually has quite a huge impact on medicine, particularly the World Wars, World War One, World War Two. So development of new techniques, just the sheer amount of injured people they have at the time means they have to approach things quite differently than they were. Communication is going to be a huge factor. So it's present all the way through and about how it improves. So at the start, there is a lot of communication, but it's very slow. We need to look at how it improves. And then the last one, which doesn't appear very often, but it's what they mean by chance is just sheer luck. So nobody was trying to achieve anything or find anything, but by sheer good luck, they just happened to come across it. And a lovely example of that is Fleming, who goes off on holiday and he leaves his lab in a mess and he leaves his window open and some penicillin spores happen to flying through the window into his petri dish and he discovers penicillin. Things like that. So, why are factors important? Why do we need to learn them? Well, the exam board might ask you about one in a question. So, it might ask you to consider how important a factor was. And I've put an example for you here. So, government was the most important factor in improving medicine in the modern period. How far do you agree? Now, don't panic if you're not sure how you would go about answering that. I'll do a whole series of videos on the different factors and the different time periods as well. But looking at this, so I might be talking about government in the modern period. So I might be mentioning NHS. I might be talking about health campaigns they do, so stopping smoking, eating your five a day. Maybe I talk about the fact that they provide us with free rubbish collection, we have sewer systems, we have fresh water, and then I'd weigh it up against other factors. So another example, religion was the most important factor in preventing the development of medicine in the Middle Ages. So again, maybe I'm talking about how they don't allow dissection, or I'm talking about how they wouldn't allow any ideas that go against Galen. And then you would bring in other factors. So you would talk about, say, the lack of science. So we need to be prepared for those kind of questions to come up. But there is another reason why we're going to use that. It can also help you to write in more detail. And here's an example of where the questions you would use that. So, question that came up a couple of years ago on one of the examples, why was there an increase in medical knowledge in the Renaissance? So nowhere in the question does it mention a factor. It doesn't flag up to you to write in factors. But here's where you should. So let's say, for instance, that I don't use factors. So I'm starting to write my answer and I'm saying one reason for an increase in medical knowledge was this. So in the Renaissance, great at improving medical knowledge. And then I start to give my facts. So I talk about anatomy. He does his dissections. He does lectures. He writes his book, The Fabric of the Human Body. So he communicates his ideas. And then I kind of get stuck because there isn't really anything else to say about him. So I've covered the main things. And now there is the danger that I start becoming vague or I start repeating myself because I know I need to write more, but I'm not sure what to write. But now let's have a look at the same question if I wrote in factors. So instead of just saying Vesalius, I'm going to say one reason for an increase in medical knowledge was the work of individuals. So I've named a factor. So you also notice as well that I have started my sentence just by rewording the question. So often people are, I don't know how to start. I know what I want to say, but I can't start writing. We just reword the question as our starting point. So I've named a factor. I'm going to say individuals. So I'm writing about Vesalius. I'm saying about the anatomy book, but I can now talk about other things as well. I'm talking about other individuals from the Renaissance. So I'm going to bring in Harvey. So I'm going to include Harvey, the heart, the book that he writes. I'm also going to mention Sydenham and how he identifies that diseases are unique. They all have their own symptoms. And now I've got a paragraph of really good facts that the examiner can reward me for. So let's say I've done that. I've done my paragraph on factors. I've used the individual. So now I'm going to do my second paragraph. And this time I'm going to just start by talking about the microscope. So I'm going to say there's an increase in medical knowledge. Another reason was the microscope. So I'm going to mention that it was invented by Van Leeuwenhoek. Bonus points if you learn the spelling of his name. So early microscope from Van Leeuwenhoek. And that through that early microscope, he managed to see what he called animalcules. We would call it bacteria. So we're going to be very clear that he doesn't understand that these are germs and these cause disease. He literally sees them and is like, oh, that's quite interesting. So I've written about that. Van Leeuwenhoek, spelled correctly. I've mentioned animalcules, but again, I'm stuck. I don't know what else to say that isn't vague or repetitive. If, however, I use a factor, so I use a factor of technology. So another reason there was an increase in medical knowledge in the Renaissance was new technology. So still mention the microscope, Van Leeuwenhoek. Also talking though about mechanical pumps. So these come in the Renaissance. They have very early fire engines that use mechanical pumps to pump water. And they, of course, help Harvey discover that the heart acts as a pump. And then finally, a really important piece of technology, the printing press. So I can talk about how that helps with the spread of ideas. And what it means is that I can then write a paragraph that has a lot more information and I get a lot more marks for. Okay, so to sum up, factors, nothing to be scared of. They're just reasons why things happen. There might well be a question where they name them, and then we have to say whether it's important or not, but also really useful for that why question.